Hello, welcome to talksonweb.com. Today I'm going to be talking about how to safely store your passwords using a hashing algorithm. In the past we used MD5, which was made by an MIT professor, and the SHA family, which is also very strong in the past, but now security experts tell us to abandon this approach. These are no longer good. And as I go through these other topics, you'll see why that is. For now, they're recommending the Blowfish hashing algorithm. And my primary concern is going to be to show you how to create this in your application. I'm going to be using the CodeIgniter framework, but you can get the gist of what I'm doing and pretty much use any other framework you want to. It's not that difficult. If you want the coding that I'm using, it's on this particular web page. You can go to talksonweb.com and browse this part of it. But for now, I'm just going to jump to the programming aspect of this. And here is my controller, and so the first part is someone shows up to my website and they want to register. They give me their username, they give me their password, and they say submit. So we jump down here, and this function, this method is called. I connect to my database and I connect to the users table that I have. This is how you do that in CodeIgniter. Okay, and then I call the create method. So I'm going to jump to my database tables, actually database coding, and you'll notice that in this create method, what I've done is I've created a salt value. In the past, what we did was we used one single salt value, but now industry experts are telling us this is not a good idea. We need to use a different salt value for each single password we have, because this makes it much more difficult for the hackers to unhash the values that we have. It takes them a lot of time, a lot of power, a lot of money. So it's good. Make them suffer. And in case you don't know what a salt value is, it's basically when you hash a password, you can throw in random alphanumeric keys to make the password much more difficult to crack. It was a security measure. So in this case, we're going to, each time somebody comes to register on our website, we're going to create a salt, and then we're going to use a different salt for each single user. So now, what is the mcrypt create IV function? This function will return random values to you. In my case, the first argument was, how many characters do you want? I want 15 characters. And then there's a constant. If you go to php.net, you'll notice that this constant is defined on their website. And what this constant will do is, it will give you back random values. If I had not used mcrypt dev urandom and just used dev_random, that would have given me a separate value each single time, but for web development purposes, urandom is the best one. I don't want to go into too much detail because then you're just going to be bored. So you can go to the website and actually read about this kind of stuff. Okay, so I call this function, it gives me back a value, but the value is not in human readable form. So that's why I call the base64 encode function. It will take all these different characters that are thrown back at me and turn them into actual characters that I can store and recognize. Then I take this value, and at this point it's giving me back a 20 character value. Initially it was giving me 15, but when I converted into base64 encoding, something I could read, it turned into a 20 character value. So I take out 2 characters from that using substring method function. Now I have this, and there's one single problem. Let me just go to php.net. I'm going to be using this crypt function to actually create the Blowfish algorithm encryption. And if you go here and read these instructions that they give you, they'll tell you that the salt cannot be longer than 22 characters. Also, the salt can only be these values here: letters A through Z in small or capital form, numbers 0 through 9, and the / and dot characters. It can't be any other character than this. So when I did this whole conversion, I don't know what kind of values I have with me. It could be anything, $sign and all these other stuff. So what I did was I moved down here and I ran this regular expression to remove any of the characters I have and replace them with our value. So let me just explain this. This hat means negative, that it can't be anything, hat meaning negative, can't be between the numbers 0 to 9, can't be A through Z or capital letters, / and dot sign, dot character. If it's none of these things, then replace that character with R. So if I'm getting the dollar value, so preg replace finds a dollar value or the question mark, it'll say, hey, it's not in this, then replace it with the character R. I'm using R, you can replace it with whatever you want. And then I get this whole filtered value, something that is within the rules that they have defined. Crypt Blowfish, okay? Now that we have the salt that we need, I'm going to move on to this part. Again, we go back to php.net, and for Blowfish, when we're using the crypt function, it tells us that it needs to begin with the prefix of $2a, $2x, or $y. And if your hosting environment gives you access to $2y, use this one as the most recent one, and it's best to use this. Again, if I go into too much detail, you're just going to be bored. It's better if you just sit there and read about it if you want to. Okay, so I did $2y, and then after that, if you read on, it tells you that there is, where are you exactly? Here it is. There is an iteration that Blowfish gives you. This is something that MD5 didn't give you. This is something that the SHA family didn't give you. What iteration basically means is you give the password hello and you say encrypt it for me. MD5 encrypted it for you. But what Blowfish will do is, if you give it a number between 4 and 31, let's say I give it 4, it will encrypt that password 4 different times. So it will encrypt hello one time, it will give an alphanumeric value. It will take that alphanumeric value, encrypt it again, and then again, and do that 4 different times, to the point that is very impossible. Not impossible, but it would take a hacker a very, very long time to just try to crack this thing on his own. Secondly, this is important because what hackers do nowadays is they use the brute force method. And brute force, what they're doing is they're using their machinery to just trying to guess what your password is. If you've done iterations on them, like 4, 5, 6, a number between 4 and 31, then it's much more difficult. It makes it much more difficult for them to crack your passwords. Either way, there's one downside to this, is if you pick a very high number like 11, 12, 13, and you keep going up there, it will take much more processing power from your hosting environment. So when somebody hits register, it will take them a while before they actually go through the registration process. And if they click login, the whole hashing process begins, and it takes them a while to go through it. So I'm going to jump back to my code, and now that we have the salt, we move on to the flag. The flag, now you've noticed that we have $2y, so that PHP knows this is a Blowfish algorithm that we want. I'm using the level 5 iteration. I want it to iterate 5 times, which is enough. It won't take away too many processing powers for me. And then we move down here. Down here, what we do is we take the flag that we've created here, which tells PHP that we want the Blowfish algorithm on level 5 iteration, and then we take the salted value that we just created here, and now we have this salted value and the flag. Now here's the crypt function. If we go back here, you'll notice that